Mike Florio is joining us on loan from Pro Football Talk. Always great to talk to Mike. And you can see him with Chris Sims Monday through Friday preceding this show on Peacock. Why did the Raiders wait a day to fire Antonio Pierce?
Well, first of all, Dan, and Happy New Year if it's not too late to say Happy
It
New
is.
Year.
It's
but
too
first
late.
of all,
Yeah, it's
okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Happy New Year anyway. I mean, what's the alternative? Unhappy New Year? Is that what happens?
How about just hi, Mike? How are you?
Hi. Hi, Dan. Unless you are going to jump into the chase for Mike Vrabel, which maybe the Raiders will, you can't have face-to-face interviews with coordinators from other teams until January 20. So you don't have to make a snap decision right away. But you'd like to think, as Jerry Jones so eloquently said last week going into the Week 18 game against the Commanders, the hay is in the barn on what you're going to do about your coach. The Patriots knew. Why wait? Now, look, there's an element of awkwardness that creeps in when you're firing the guy still in the locker room after the regular season finale. But once you know what you're going to do, any delay in implementing it runs the risk that someone else is going to find out and it's going to get out there. So, whether it's Mark Davis wanted to talk to Tom Brady, who was working on Sunday and not at the game and not available for Davis to caucus with, whatever the case may be, one day isn't a huge thing in the grand scheme of things, because if you're looking for coordinators, you got a couple more weeks before you can even sit down and talk to them.
I talked to somebody yesterday I trust in the business, and we were talking about a variety of things, including Brady's fingerprints all over the Raiders situation here. And I said I thought Antonio Pierce was going to be fired. So now you have the Mike Vrabel situation, Vrabel-Brady relationship. And so this person said to me, I could see a scenario where Vrabel doesn't go to the Patriots because of his allegiance to Bill Belichick and what the Krafts did to Belichick out the door. I don't know if he would do that. It seems like he's the obvious guy there. But can Brady convince Vrabel to go to the Raiders?
Well, that's where it would become extremely interesting if Brady would use the way the Patriots treated Belichick, even though it kind of fell apart for Brady and Belichick near the end. But that's a way to convince Vrabel not to go back there. Vrabel's going to do his own thing. Vrabel's going to do what's right for him. And he's got that red jacket with the crest on it that makes him a member of the Patriots Hall of Fame. It's going to be tough to pull him away from New England. But he's the one guy right now who is going to have multiple opportunities. Interviewing with the Bears today. Saints want to talk to him. Jets have talked to him. Raiders presumably will want to. It's everybody but the Jaguars so far have been linked to him in one way, shape, or form. And at the end of the day, he'll know in his heart whether he wants to go to New England despite the things that happened with Belichick. And I could see Vrabel compartmentalizing it. I could see Vrabel smoothing things over with Bill. If Bill's nose is out of joint, how dare you take that job and go to New England when I was there all those years. And Vrabel's he's got a lot of parcels in him where he'll make his point in a very blunt way, but it's also kind of a charming and funny way. And he's good with people in that respect. And I think that he'll manage Belichick and he'll go where he feels like he should go. And it just seems like a no-brainer for him to go to New England. But how many times have we seen no-brainers that just blow up and go a different direction?
How do you think Brady, like after he does the Super Bowl, do you think Tom Brady's one and done as a broadcaster?
I think that Tom Brady, and I made this point last week, Tom Brady either has no self-awareness whatsoever to realize the various landmines and conflicts of interest, and it's just a bad look. Him trying to do two jobs that do not mesh. And Miles Simmons of PFT put it best when this was all first percolating. He wants to be the best at everything he does. It's impossible to be the best possible broadcaster you can be and the best possible part owner of a team you can be. And he's either completely oblivious to that, or he is hyper aware of the fact that he can do whatever the hell he wants. And he's going to do whatever he wants to do. But I think at some point he's going to realize not being able to go to the games, not being involved with the team in the regular season as involved as he'd like to be, because he has another job that keeps him occupied on Sundays in other cities covering other games. I think at some point he's going to realize on his own that I shouldn't do both. I can't do both. I want the competitive juices. I want to be in the fray. I want to be with the Raiders full time. And I think that there are people in the league who are quietly hoping that's the way it goes.
Will the Lions lose both their coordinators?
Well, Ben Johnson is only going to leave if he feels like it's the right opportunity. Alignment with the front office is one of his top factors, and he's learned from the mistakes of others where that window opens to be a head coach. You jump through it and you land in a briar patch, and 2-3 years later, you're out of a job and you wish you hadn't left. And I also think, and I heard this weekend, he'd much rather be the mad scientist who is designing all these different crazy trick plays and exploiting defensive weaknesses than the guy who's at the center of attention, the guy who gets all the pressure, the guy whose address gets posted online and people show up at his house. And Dan Campbell goes through a lot. Now, he makes a lot more money, but $4 or $5 million a year for an offensive coordinator, that's not a bad life, and you get to do what you want to do, and you don't have to deal with all the hassles of being a head coach. And he seems to be just sensitive to the fact that life changes dramatically when you become a head coach. It's got to be the right spot. And I would not rule him out going back to Detroit and just waiting and waiting and waiting for the perfect opportunity.
Talking to Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk Live, co-host, also contributor to Football Night in America. We just played our weekly game of in or out. I'm sure you've heard of it. The first pick of the NFL draft will not be a quarterback. Are you in or out?
I'll say I'm out because if the Titans decide they want a quarterback, they'll take one. And if they don't, I think they should trade the pick to a team that really falls in love with one of these quarterbacks. Now, it's still early in the process, and whatever teams have put together by way of preliminary draft boards, that goes out the window once the coaches aren't coaching anymore and they get involved in the scouting process and their opinions begin to skew things. So there's a lot of work still left to be done. But just from the standpoint of teams that need quarterbacks, you got teams that have franchise quarterbacks and teams that don't. And the teams that don't are trying to get one. And the Raiders are a team that could maybe trade up with the Titans. There are teams out there that I think if it's not the Titans taking a quarterback, they'll trade the pick to a team that wants one because the Titans could then parlay that into a bunch of other picks that could address other needs.
If Jared Goff wins Super Bowl MVP, he's going to the Hall of Fame. Are you in or out?
I'd have to take a closer look at his entire career. It would be his second Super Bowl appearance. The Rams basically attaching a first-round pick to get him off their books is not a good look. I don't know that it's enough to get to the Hall of Fame, but it puts him on track for something that 3 years ago we never would have dreamed possible. Because, this never gets described this way, but the Rams gave up an extra first-round pick. They gave a 1 and a 3 for Stafford, and they attached a first-round pick to Goff to get his contract away. That's how far he had fallen in the eyes of Sean McVay. And it might have been the best thing that ever happened to him because it sparked this resurgence where, I'd never thought of that, but I still think he'd have more work to do.
All right, final one. Aaron Rodgers will not be a player or a broadcaster/analyst next season. Are you in or out?
Well, I think if he retires, he won't be a broadcaster. He said he'll walk off into the sunset, but I also can't imagine him fading away from relevance and keeping his mouth shut. I am out on him not being a player, though. I think he'll find a spot next year.
Yeah, I do too.
I think he will.
Yeah.
I've been watching Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh makes a lot of sense. And Sims made a point today. This guy, Chad Brinker, that nobody heard of until yesterday, who somehow arrived in Tennessee 2 years ago and is now completely in charge of the operation. Nashville is a place where Rodgers has a house. The Titans need a quarterback. Here's the key. Brinker was with the Packers from 2010 through 2022 in the front office, and we know how Rodgers feels about the Green Bay front office. And he either loves Chad Brinker or he hates Chad Brinker. There is no in between with Aaron Rodgers. So you may scratch Tennessee off the list right now if he doesn't like Chad Brinker, but I can see Aaron Rodgers and Mike Tomlin finding a way to join forces for one season, and man, that would be exciting.
The MVP conversation is always fascinating. And you have a guy that, if this was the Academy Awards, it's Josh Allen's turn, they would probably say. Whereas Lamar Jackson probably had his best performance. But you get voter fatigue. You get voters who go, yeah, but he doesn't do well in the... Like, people have their own criteria here. What do you think this comes down to as to why this quarterback will win the MVP.
Well, and I said this the other day, trust your gut if you're a voter, because what we do as humans, we find objective statistics and facts to support whatever it is our gut is telling us to do anyway. Watch Josh Allen, watch Lamar Jackson. Look at the season Lamar Jackson had in comparison to last year when he was the MVP. And I know that other guys had less seasons than that and guys had better seasons than him. I get all that. But you got to trust your gut. Who is the MVP? And the problem with this award, Dan, and I say this as one of the voters fully cognizant of the fact that they may take the award away or the vote away. And if they do, I don't care. What the hell is an MVP? Like, what does it mean? I heard Chris Fowler talking about it during the game on Saturday. Most valuable to your team? Well, is that what it is? I mean, it's an age-old debate in sports. Most valuable to, if it's the most valuable player to the league, it's Patrick Mahomes every year until he retires, because there is no one bringing value to the sport like him. So it's just a crazy thing. And I just tell people, whatever your gut feeling is, go with it. Because if you start coming up with objective justifications, all you're doing is, because we can find any stat to support whatever it is we want to do.
Wow. But don't say that you don't want your vote. They can take it away.
Well, let me tell you something. I've spent about this week, and this is a busy week, and I know we're covering sports. I've had real jobs. Real jobs suck. I'm not complaining about my job. But to throw another 10 hours of work between the all-pro votes and the awards ballots on top of everything else for the grand total salary of $0.00, you get to a point where you're like, you know what? I wouldn't be so upset if they took my vote away.
I'll take your vote.
Okay.
But I don't know if the commissioner will let me have it.
It's not that. Trust me, the commissioner has nothing to do with it. Or I would not. If the commissioner had anything to do with it, Dan,
how did you get a vote? Yeah,
I wouldn't have the vote.
He would vote against you getting a vote.
He would blackball me.
Yeah. All right. Well, you can ship me your MVP vote.
All right.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Dan. Good talking to you. Happy New Year.
That's Mike Florio. Happy New Year, Mike. You can see him on Football Night in America.